In Year 13, Ms. McIntosh here. So, as promised, I'm just going to go over the market for electricity. You might remember last week I sent you a worksheet, and one of the questions I had for you was like a double shift in the electricity market. So, I have here the answers more or less. And we had a decrease in supply because it was like low rainfall, so it's harder to generate electricity since most of our electricity comes from hydro lakes. And the other event was it's colder than normal, so people would be using more electricity. So this is quite tricky. There's a lot going on here. There's a shift in demand, an increase, and a decrease in supply. And so what I've asked you to do is to show the changes in the surplus. This one is quite tricky in terms of whether the surplus has increased or decreased. And what I'm going to say to you is whenever you come to looking at whether the surplus has increased or decreased, you need to look at the model in front of you really, really carefully. Okay, so look at the areas. If you have numbers up here like, 10, 12, 13, and some quantity numbers, then you can actually calculate the change and it will tell you whether it's increased or decreased. Otherwise, it's just literally visually looking at your model. Anyway, I think for today, it's more just like being able to show where the surplus is before and after. And so again, I'm going to draw up my trusty little table. This is a bit boring, but it's really useful for showing the changes in the surplus and just being clear on whether, where it is and where it isn't. And I think it'll help you kind of like, as you go with this, be able to see, like you're not quite sure initially whether CS, but as you do this more and more, you're going to get more confident on that. So it's just a very basic table like this. You can jazz it up if you like. And we're going to put the CS and the PS. I'll leave off allocative efficiency for now because I can tell you now there's no change. Allocative efficiency is still there. I suppose what you can say is if you think about allocative efficiency in terms of how much surplus in total there is in the market, that will have changed. So if we were to add up the size of the CS and the PS before and after, the value of that will have changed, but I think that's probably not really what I want you to learn just at the minute. It's something that you can look at later. So here is B for before and A for after. So when you come to these models, you do need to be really careful with your labeling and also using a ruler. I can't use a ruler on this whiteboard thing, so I feel like I have a bit of an out, but I will encourage you to use a ruler and just be really, really careful with your labeling. So let's go blue because I like blue and I've used blue here. The consumer surplus before, so we need to find the original D curve and supply curve. And this is our equilibrium position before. So I'm just going to put like a little E here. Now, as a hint to you, I've used numbers here. You can use labeling as well, like I did last time, A, B, C, D. And if you want to color the, before situation for the consumer surplus and after, it might just help you to just kind of see exactly what you're looking for. That's not a B, that's just, I'm just trying to put like new equilibrium position. So I think the really smart thing to do here would just be clear, where were we before? Was equilibrium before? Where is it after? Okay, so we've gone from this point to this point here. The other thing to remember is in this case here, the market price has been able to adjust freely. This is going to be really important when we look at price controls. Because the market price has been able to adjust freely, the government hasn't stopped that market forces process from happening, we still do have allocative efficiency. The surplus will change in terms of its size, but it will still be maximised. Okay, and we won't have this thing called a deadweight loss, which you're hopefully going to learn this week. So the consumer surplus before, here's my old equilibrium, and I want to find it. So it's the price that they actually pay up to the highest price that they would have been prepared to pay, which is somewhere way up here. We don't know that, but here's the top of our demand curve. So we're looking from here all the way to the quantity that they consumed to the price they actually had to pay. So the difference between the price they're willing to pay, what they actually pay, times the amount that they actually consume. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So let's write that here. 1, I'm still on red. 2, okay, let's just stick with red for consumer surplus. Make it easier for you if you like. All right, sorry if you're colourblind, let me know. Okay, producer surplus before, again, here's our old equilibrium position, and we're looking at the price they actually receive, so what producers receive for their product. down to the price that they would have been prepared to receive for the earliest unit sold. Okay, so that's here. So this is the marginal cost of the earliest unit sold that we can see, or the difference between the price they actually receive and the price that they would have been prepared to receive times the amount that they sell. So that's 4 and 5. Okay, so I'm going to put 4 and 5. Probably a little comma there would be good, so it's not like 45, but it's 4 and 5. Let's just put that in here. Now, I can probably imagine that some of you are like, why is the producer surplus not here? No. So P times Q is like the total revenue for producers. All right. And then if we remember that S equals marginal cost, underneath the supplier curve is the total cost of producing Q, if you like, whereas above that is the marginal profit that each producer in the market would make up to this last, like imagine that this dot here represents like the last producer in the market, like selling the electricity. For them, they receive exactly what it costs them to make that last unit of electricity. But everybody else makes like a little profit. We call it marginal profit, right? So, you know, if we go 1 unit of electricity costs you this much, and then that's the price you receive, so you get a marginal profit, whereas that profit decreases as we increase the amount we're supplying, because remember, marginal cost rises as you supply more. Probably too much information, but just a little bit of extra detail for you. Okay, this is not producer surplus. Okay, so now let's look at after, and I do want to use blue. All right, so we go to our new equilibrium position. Okay, so this is the new price in the market, because remember, market forces are allowed to operate. The price is being bidded up by consumers, and that's resulted in a higher quantity and a price in the market, because even though there was a decrease in supply, there's been an increase in demand to kind of like offset that. Okay, so we end up with quite a high price and a small increase in the quantity sold in the market. So here's our new equilibrium, and again, remember the consumer surplus is the difference between what they're willing to pay and what they actually pay. So they do pay P1, so we do look there, but remember they've now got a new high demand for this product, so their marginal utility actually has increased. They value the electricity more because it's cold. All right, so we actually have to read off this curve. All right, so therefore this is the highest price they're now willing to pay, which is marginally higher, to the quantity they consume, to the price they actually have to pay. So it's now 1 and 6. So we just put 1 and 6. Oh, that's a terrible, like I feel like it's a little bit too long. So you're probably thinking, what has happened to, 2 and 3? Well, they might have lost 2, but they have picked up 6, haven't they? Which is, it's quite a lot. So they're not necessarily worse off. Sometimes what you need to think about is the net gain. You might have lost a bit, but you've gained more. So they've lost a bit because the price has increased, but then they've gained more because they're consuming more, and also they value the product higher. Again, probably too much information, but you're probably like, you know, it was here, what happened to this? Well, if we look at the producer surplus now, the producers are now receiving this price, okay, to their new supply curve, which is actually here. Okay, remember their costs have increased, their marginal costs. So they've received a higher price, but the new price, the new sort of lowest cost or lowest price that they were prepared to offer the electricity at has actually increased. So we now read off the price that they were willing to sell the electricity at, the lowest marginal cost, to the price they actually received, to the new higher quantity sold. So the producer surplus is actually 2, 7, and 4. So 2, 7, and 4. Okay, so they keep 4, they steal 2 from the consumers, and they get 7, which is this additional surplus that is gained from the market from that increase in demand. So it's kind of a weird situation where we talk about resources being allocated between markets where the demand is for them and where they're being used efficiently. In this market here, you've kind of got, it's quite a tricky one. Like initially, like producers had to take away some resources from the market because their costs have risen, and so therefore, you know, we had that decrease in supply. So that's actually where we've lost 3 and 5. So you've lost some resources in this market from the cost being increased, and it's more expensive. But then you have that kind of offset by the fact that there's actually more demand in it. So I guess it's kind of like it is costing them more, but consumers are actually prepared to pay more for this product to kind of offset those initial costs. Okay, and so that's why even though we lose 5 and 3, we do gain 6 and 7. So you can see that here, you've lost 3 and 5, but then you gain 6 and 7. And so the consumers, they lose a bit of surplus. They lose 2 because the price has increased, but then they also gain the 6 because there's more electricity being generated, and also they value it more. The producers, you know, you can see here that they have lost 5, but then they've gained 2 and 7. So what you're looking at is like the net gain, and you would need to calculate the area of surplus to see whether it's increased or decreased. Okay, looking at this, I could probably say that the producer surplus is, wow, it's marginally higher, I guess. Marginally, I think the increase in price, and they're also selling more, so their surplus would increase. All right, so if you like, I can put that here. We could say it's definitely increased. They've got a higher price. It's gone up, and they're also selling more. So yes, the difference between what they're willing to pay and what they actually receive, it's, you know, like it's probably marginal because their costs have increased, but I think you can still say that their surplus has increased. Again, if this is kind of like, well, I'm not sure what's going on, this is something that we will work on in class, okay, because we are going back, yay, and it is a bit tricky and you have to see. All right, consumer surplus, they are paying a higher price, but they also have a lot more value on this product because their demand has increased, and also they're consuming more. So I would say that 1 and 6 is marginally a bigger area than 1, 2, and 3. I don't know, what do you think? It's possibly about the same, isn't it? So we could be like question mark, no change, or a slight increase. Okay, that's an N, no change. Terrible whiteboard skills here. Okay, I'm going to stop here, all right? If the last bit here about what increasing or decreasing is too much for you, don't worry about that. What I think you want to just focus on now is just being able to identify where the surplus is before, okay, and where it is after. All right, and if you can do that for now, then that's great. This idea about whether it's increased or decreased and whether it's allocative efficiency will come to you in time. Okay, so ka kite for now. Please remember, if you've got questions, just let me know.